Hi everybody, welcome to my beginner's guide on how to play better at the Recon Sniper class in Battlefield 5. Now first off, let's kind of cover your overall Battlefield goals that you should be trying to achieve when you're playing Battlefield 5. So the first one is, if you can, you should try and spawn on and stick with your squad, because squad play is key to success in Battlefield 5 often, because it means you can get into the action quicker, you can revive each other, you can give each other ammo if you're a support, you can revive people if you're meds, or they can do the same to you. Also, if you receive orders, try following them as well, because it means everybody's going to be moving in the same direction. Battlefield is really all about capturing or defending objectives, so make sure you're doing that. PTFO. When you're playing though, remember, don't always use the direct route from A to B. You can if you're an assault player, if you're in a tank, I guess. Especially if you're like a recon class. Flank around, curve around, so people aren't expecting you. Remember, although spotting has been nerfed, you can't spot in the same way that you could do with the top right bumper on consoles. You know, when you see somebody, you can do a 3D spot to a location on the map. So if you do see danger, you know, spot it. And if you do spot vehicles and things like that, they will get spotted properly. Remember to revive teammates, well, squad mates, if they're close to you, because you can do now. Obviously, you couldn't do that in other battlefields. Only medics can do that, but anybody who's in your squad, you can revive them, but only do it safe. And then I will kind of reiterate PTFO, play the objective. That's what Battlefield's all about. However, one of the more difficult things about being a sniper, about being a recon, is that your main weapon puts you at quite a severe disadvantage when it comes to going toe-to-toe with other classes in close combat. You may do the most damage with your gun, but it'll be the slowest firing. So unless you headshot people, you know, they're gonna black you with their fully automatics. Now you do have a pistol, and you do have throwing knives, and you could use a semi-auto rifle, but those guns, as I'll talk about a bit later, have very limited magazines. So you've always got to bear that in mind, that it's difficult for you to go toe-to-toe. You really want to always be trying to work on the periphery of objectives, to work your way around, so that people aren't really aiming directly at you. You know, you'll have the time to pull off those headshots. And I think that this means, as a recon class, as the sniper, as I say, you're most effective at the edges of objectives and not at the centre of the attack or the centre of the defence, because what you're working for are clear lines of sight, so you can take out enemies at medium to long range. So on offence, you're trying to get a vantage point on the flank so that you can see the objective and take out enemies, so that all your teammates can then attack. And on defence, you'll probably be doing the same thing, you know, moving to the edge of the flag, looking for those lines of sight, looking at the flags that have been captured by the enemy or where their home spawn is, and thinking, right, that's where they're going to be coming from, that's where I need to be looking to take them out with those one-shot kills. And I think because of this, and especially on consoles where accuracy is difficult, I think the recon class can be really, really effective where attackers and defenders are bunched around objectives. And this is in the modes like Frontlines, Grand Operations and Breakthrough, the more linear objective-based modes, where you've only really got, say, one or two flags or two objectives that the enemies or you're trying to take. And so you get lots of people bunched up, and then you can get those headshots in. This doesn't mean that Recon isn't effective in Conquest or any of the other game modes, especially if you're in a well-balanced squad. You know, you're playing with people where there's a support player, a medic and an assault player. But when you're playing as a recon in Conquest, you've really got to think about how you can move around the edge of those objectives. You know, play the flanks and support your squad and your team by taking out those outliers, those players that are running in, the enemy players that are running in from other flags, to take them out before they get involved in the fight. Right, okay, so let's talk about your two primary goals as a recon player, as I see it. And the first one is spotting. Okay, the most important thing for you as a recon, especially when you're playing games like Frontlines or Breakthrough or Grand Operations, is spotting, because spotting is effectively being stripped out of the game in Battlefield 5 for everybody else. But the recon class, you've got two gadgets that enable you to spot, and it is incredibly powerful. Because a single Recon class player using the spotting scope can effectively bring an entire enemy attack, an entire enemy push to a stop in breakthrough, especially on defense. And you know, similarly on offense, you can use your flare gun over an objectives, and then all the enemies on that flag can then be highlighted, and then all the assault players can start throwing grenades in or launching Panzerfaust, all that sort of stuff, and it is very, very good as well. So your first primary recon goal is spotting. You need to use your spotting scope to highlight enemies so that your teammates can see them on their minimaps and kill them quickly, enabling your team to defend or attack objectives. Now, to effectively use the spotting scope, it's best to get away from the objectives and into an elevated position that gives you a good view of the approaching enemies, and then just run it backwards and forwards along the horizon. You don't even have to see them very well. The spotting scope will pick them up and they will be highlighted to your teammates on their mini maps. Now, I tend to find the spotting scope works best on defense, but it does depend on the location of the objectives and where you can get to use the scope. And quite often on offense, you know, you can get a good view of often the whole of the map, and the spotting scope can really highlight the enemies and help your teammates and squad mates like that. If you're on offense, or you want to play as a bit of a more aggressive recon class, you can use your flare gun. And so your objective is to use your flare gun over objectives to highlight enemies so that you and your teammates can kill them effectively. Now remember, to use the flare gun in Battlefield 5, you fire it high into the air, not into the ground like we could do on Battlefield 1. And then you can go off and you can resupply to get more flares. As I've said, I think the flare gun works best on offense, but again, if you're defending an objective, you can use it to highlight enemy attackers. So if you're starting to get overrun by enemies, you know, you're on a flag and it starts to tick in the wrong direction, fire a flare into the sky, and you and your teammates will then see where the enemies are, and then you can defend properly. Now, your second primary recon goal is to use and place your spawn beacon near to objectives in advantageous positions so that you and your squad mates can spawn in close to the action and engage enemy attackers or defenders more effectively. Now, this is because in many of the maps in Battlefield 5, in game modes like Breakthrough, Frontlines, Ground Operations and Conquest, you can have a really long run, often under enemy fire, from your home base spawn or from a captured flag to where the action is, and a cleverly placed spawn beacon can make all the difference between capturing an objective or not. Now, also remember that once your beacon is placed, there's nothing wrong with you then changing your tactics as a recon, so holding back more, maybe using a spotting scope from distance to take people out, or even changing class, you know, change to an assault or a medic to take on that flag. And then if your spawn beacon gets destroyed or the map moves forward to take new objectives, change back to recon and then place another spawn beacon somewhere good. Now, secondary recon goal. And for me this is quite simple, it's just to engage enemies at medium to long distance with one-shot kill headshots to break down the enemy, whether that be on offense or defense, so that your squad and your team can effectively attack or defend objectives. Because with a few well-placed headshots, you know, as a recon sniper you can clear the way for an easy flag capture or a defense, but you need to stay cool and aim for the head. And this sounds a lot easier than it actually is. To get better at headshots, what you need to do, well, what I found works for me, is if you fire up Combined Arms, you know, the single player game, and spawn in as a sniper, as a recon, just practice hitting the AI bots in the head. You know, play it on easy and just run around hitting them, and you'll start to build up that muscle memory. And then when you feel a little bit more confident, play some team deathmatch as a sniper and practice hitting enemies in the head. And pretty much you'll then start, as soon as you're automatically aiming down sights and looking at enemies, you'll be looking for that headshot really quick. So to summarise this all up then, I think the Recon class can be really powerful in Battlefield 5, and especially in, you know, Breakthrough, Frontlines and Grand Operations, those linear objective modes where enemies are all bunching together, and things like the spotting scope and the flare can be really effective. And just remember, use that scope, use that flare, use those spawn beacons where appropriate, and you can really make, as a one player, a massive difference to the way that the whole game is going. So there we go. What we'll do next is we'll look at some loadouts, and hopefully it will give you a better idea how to play better as a recon class in Battlefield 5. Okay, so let's look at some recon loadouts that you might want to try out. So this is the ones I look at. So let's start off with your combat role. So this is the different kind of perks that you can run, and at the moment in Battlefield 5 we've only got two. We've got Sniper or Pathfinder. With the Sniper combat role, we have the Eagle Eye trait, so when we shoot enemies and we hit them, they get spotted for all our teammates to blast at them too, and we can hold our breath for longer. With Pathfinder, you can spawn on any spawn beacons that your team has put down, not just the ones from your squad, and then you get additional requisition when someone spawns on your spawn beacon. Tricky. Oh, I think the Sniper combat role is better, basically for that spotting enemies when you shoot them, because quite often what happens is when you're firing at enemies you'll hit them, not in a headshot, so they won't die, and that fact that they're spotted allows some of your teammates, if they're looking in the same direction, to finish them off for you. Weapons, you've really got a choice between the bolt actions and the semi-autos. So the bolt actions like the LEE-ENFIELD and the GADGET M95, the Krag Jawson. The beauty with these guns is they're one-shot kills to the head, which is nice. And then with the semi-autos like the Model 8 or the ZH29, they're not, do less damage, but they fire faster. However, the problem with the semi-autos, the self-loading, the SLRs, is, for me, is that magazine size. Only 5 bullets. Even when you get down to SPECIALIZATIONS 1906, you've still only got 5 bullets in it. And that can be a problem when you're trying to go toe-to-toe with assault, supports and medics, because generally that's why you'd be using one of the self-loading rifles. So for me, when I play as a Recon Sniper, I prefer to use either the LEE-ENFIELD or the M95. I stick a 3x scope on it, so I think that works at medium to long range, close range as well. I just like that role. I think sort of skirting around the outside of objectives and blatting people from medium range is what works for me when I play as a recon. And that one-shot kill to the head, you know, that it feels absolutely fantastic when you do that. Specializations, quick aim, custom stock, so I move faster when I'm aiming down sights. Lighten stock, so I can move faster that way. And I don't think I've ever bayonet charged anybody in Battlefield 5, but I used to love it in Battlefield 1, running around bayonet charging people, so, you know, we'll stick with that. But you choose the specializations that match you. Now, sidearm, M1911, you could argue like the Mark 6 revolver's better because it does more damage. I like the 1911 because it fires very, very quickly and it's quick to reload. Knife, whatever goes with you. I've got the cookery, but you know, whatever you like. Now, gadgets, this is where we get into the meat of the type of recon you're going to be playing. So, let's start over this side. Spawn beacon. I think when you're playing the more linear objective modes, as I've said, like Breakthrough, Grand Operations or Frontlines, the spawn beacon is the thing you want to be using because you want to be pushing forward to get near an objectives that either you're attacking, or if you're defending on an objective, put your spawn beacon near to it, even though you can spawn on the objective, so that way if that objective gets captured, you and your squad can then spawn in close and get involved in the action. I mean, you could argue that if you're really camping, you know, the AP mine might be quite good. I've never used the sniper decoy. It sounds quite cool. You could put it down as people hit it, they get spotted. But for me, the spawn beacon, that's the main choice. And then with your sort of main gadget, you've really got the flare gun or the spotting scope. And again, that depends on what you're doing. I think if you're on the offensive, so you're trying to take objectives, so you're going to be moving in fairly close, you can use the flare gun to spot everybody in objective, so your teammates can see them and take them out. And the spotting scope is better for when you're on defense, so you can hang back, come away from the objectives, find yourself somewhere high, crouch down or lie down and then just spend, you know, a lot of time, you know, minutes of time just spotting the enemies. And as I say, you can stop an entire enemy attack with the spotting scope, because as you're spotting them, all your teammates just take over and start blatting them, and that can be very good. And then whether you want to carry the throwing knife or a smoke grenade or a frag, it's up to you. The throwing knife can be cool because it can kill people quickly. Not very accurate on console, but I like the idea of it, so I run with the throwing knife. So there we go, that's my setup. I use combat roll sniper. My weapon is the LEE-ENFIELD number 4 with the mark with a 3x sight on. I run the cookery knife, flare gun if I'm on offense, scope if I'm on defense, and the spawn beacon and the throwing knife. So there we go, that's my guide to the Recon Sniper class in Battlefield 5. I hope it's been useful. If you've got any questions or comments, put them down below. If you enjoyed the video, hit like, want to see more of the same. And I will see you again soon.